And then she was time to.
She can come tomorrow if she is able. Regardless, it's at 10 a.m.
Mia?
Room next door.
Okay.
It really.
Looking at my
Anyone can
calendar,
come.
and I may join you in person, we'll see.
Up to.
I actually have,
She said.
my wife and I have to drop our dogs off. They're gonna get spayed and neutered. That's gonna be really early in the morning. And I was thinking I might just take the day off.
Yeah, there's some information.
And at the point right now where I have so much vacation time, I have to start using
The
some.
mayor is
Or I'll just lose it.
what we're working on, and when he tells us what we're supposed to do. And we do it, and it shows it, you'll find it, I can't find it in here. His charge, it gives us a charge, what we're supposed to do. Yes. It's once a month.
Good evening and welcome to the Creswell City Council meeting for February 13, 2023. Would you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you for coming this evening. We begin each council meeting with a public forum, an opportunity for members of the community to speak to the council. And if you would like to do that, we need to have you fill out a speaker request form, which is in the back, on the back table, and turn it into our K recorder, Grace. Each speaker is allotted 3 minutes to address us on whatever subject they would like to. So we have one person signed up tonight, and that is Seth Clark.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor. Seth Clark, 940 Evergreen Drive, Creswell, Oregon. A lot of you look very familiar to me, so I think most of you know me. I own Blue Valley Bistro. I've also been a resident in this community for 9-ish years, I think, and a member of the Planning Commission. Last week I was approached by Mayor Stram about the upcoming challenge that we're all facing with this tough proposal. As a resident of this community, I fully understand that. I'm supportive of the idea of improving our roads, maintaining our roads, all of that this encompasses. When I was first approached, I was given a set of numbers right here, kind of talking about the proposal from a business perspective and the impact that was going to have on our businesses. And Blue Valley Bistro, my business, is on there. It was a quite shocking number to me. To the point so that my wife and I, for the first time in the 12 years that we've been in business, actually said, would it be worth our while to renew our lease when it comes up in a couple years? I had some time to process that. I wrote out a list of just my thoughts, emailed that back, just to kind of give a perspective from the business side of things. Apparently that was not taken lightly. You guys really did respond to that and kind of came up with a different set of numbers that from my end as a business owner is a lot more approachable. I also believe that it would allow future businesses coming into this town to be okay with that versus scaring them off and sending them down the road to Cottage Grove. So I know it's not on the docket tonight, but I do know there's a work session coming up and my availability is all over the place. I have no idea if I'd be able to make it. So I just wanted to put in a public commentary that I understand the challenge. I support the idea of maintaining our roads, and I appreciate you as both a resident and a business owner in this community for listening to us and trying to work and make sure that we're not scaring off our future businesses. So thank you.
Thank you, Seth. Okay, with that we move to the mayor's report. Tonight we begin with an appointment to the Planning Commission. And this was my error last month, for which I have apologized to Richard Zetterwall, and I apologize to you, the council, in that inadvertently I completely left off an appointment, a member of the Planning Commission who indicated last year he wanted to continue on the Planning Commission. I somehow didn't get that on my list last month. So Richard Zettervall, who served on the Planning Commission last year, indicated he wanted to continue serving this year. And so tonight, I want to reappoint him to the Planning Commission. So I'm asking for council consent for the reappointment of Richard Zettervall to the Planning Commission. Do I have council consent?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We have 2 vacancies on the Parks Board, and we have an applicant tonight who actually appeared before us last month, Peter Riley Osborne. He expressed interest in the Planning Commission. You might remember him from last month. We instead appointed Bill Spencer to serve on the Planning Commission, and Peter Riley then turned in an application saying, I'm very interested in the Parks and Trees Commission. So here's what he says from his application. Why do you want to become a member of this commission, the Parks and Trees Commission? I want to help include many families in the celebrations and planning around our parks and our community. What experience, training, and/or qualifications do you have for this particular commission? I have extensive experience with organizing workforces, managing volunteers, and planning/marketing events. What specific contribution do you hope to make to the commission or committee? I would like to help create memories of how amazing Creswell is, as well as get the community more engaged with the parks, the aesthetics of the town, and build ties, that word I couldn't quite read, of ownership. I think it means build ties of ownership to our city. Briefly describe your involvement in relevant community groups and activities. I have worked as a workforce manager for I think it says church events, planned and implemented music events and festivities. So I would like to appoint Peter Riley Osborne to be a member of the Parks and Trees Commission. Do I have council consent for that appointment? Yes. Okay, thank you. The Parks and Trees Board asked for a charge, and we talked about it at our work session last month. So I have created a charge, and it is here before you tonight. The charge is A, to work on plans to put up signage at Garden Lake Park about birds in the park. B, work on plans to construct and place bird boxes and bat houses around Creswell. C, work on plans to create a pollinator garden at Garden Lake Park. For each of these items, create a budget and bring the budget proposal to the City Council for discussion and approval. With council consent, the proposed budget will go to the budget officer for inclusion in the city's fiscal year 2023-24 budget to be approved by the budget committee and adopted by the council. Timeline, present the proposed budget at the February 27 or March 27 council work session. Appointees, Councilor Norma Jean Osborne, residents Brent Murphy, Benita Samuels, Stuart Samuels, and Peter Riley Osborne. At large, Riley Newman. Staff support, City Manager Amber. So council, do I have your consent for this new charge to the Parks and Trees Commission?
Yes.
All right, thank you. We move on to correspondence. We received 2 letters in our correspondence packet. Does council have any comments you would like to make about either of the letters? Councilor Shuck.
In the letter from Ms. Lowell, Manager Amber, was any research done did the citizen ask for any research to be done on why her water bill was $430 for just a single person in a single family home? That seemed a little outrageous.
Yes, we did do some research. In fact, we've been working with her for several months. That was actually a 2-month bill. And 1 month was unusually high. We have met with her, we've talked to her about the bill, we've looked for leaks, we put in a new meter, we have tried to get her to look in her house for additional leaks, we've monitored her usage, and her usage has gone down. So we have worked with her considerably on this issue.
Thank you. That exceeds my expectations. Thank you.
Any additional councilor comments on the correspondence? So go ahead, Councillor Clark.
Yes, I think given that we received 2 pieces of correspondence around the TUF as well as commentary tonight, I think I'm just reflecting on the work that we have ahead of us as we make a really important decision about balancing both the cost of living here in Creswell as well as the maintenance of the roads. I don't think it's going to be an easy decision, and so I think I'm excited about the work that we're going to be doing, hopefully to educate our community about it.
Okay. So following up on that, we will, as you know, bring this up again at our work session in February. My encouragement then was to get out and talk to residents, talk to businesses, and that's what I've been doing, and that's what led me to talk to Seth, and Jim put together a list of businesses that I just said, I'm just curious what these businesses would pay, and he put together an initial list, and it did have shock value with Seth and Melissa for sure, and when I went back to Michelle and Jim, they did some more work on it, came up with some different figures that were starkly different, and we will continue this in February. So I got the email from Stephanie, I think we all did, and I responded to her, and Manager Amberg and Jim then did fill me in on what Manager Amberg has reported tonight. And to that, I would just like to add that I responded to Stephanie with the information that I received from Manager Amberg and from Jim. And I haven't heard anything back since then. But both Jim and Manager Amberg responded that the 2 months were October and November of last year, and that the high month was October, and that after the city went out and did lots of work with her and installed a meter, her bills returned back to that $130 range the next couple of months. In my email to her, I made the comment that her email prompted me to look at my utility bills and noticed that mine are around $126, $125 the last 2 months. But of that, I said, when I looked closely at the bill, I realized that my water was $52, my sewer was $56, my public safety was $17. So I encouraged her to look closely that her water bill probably wasn't $130, but was a portion of that bill. So I just really appreciate Manager Amberg and Jim following up so quickly to those concerns. Okay, if there's not any additional comments on correspondence, we will move on to the consent calendar. In the consent calendar, all items are considered routine and are enacted by a single motion unless there is items in the correspondence that any councilor wishes to pull for the sake of correcting that item. So councilors, is there anything that needs to be pulled from the consent calendar? If not, then I'm entertaining a motion to accept the consent calendar as presented. Councilor Shuck?
I motion to approve and accept the consent calendar as presented.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second
Councilor Smith?
it. I'll second it.
All right. So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We move on to the administrative report. Manager Amberg.
Thank you, Mayor. The first item on the administrative reports are the January bills. I'd be happy to try and answer any questions you might have on the bills. Yes, Councilor Clark?
Yes, thank you so much, Manager Amberg. On page 2 of the bills, I noticed that there was a $11,194.33 payment made to Creswell School District, and I was just hoping to learn a little bit more about that.
Yes, that is our, one of the things we collect is a tax for them, and that was it's called an excise tax. We collect it on building in town, and that money goes to them. Yes. Council President Castillo?
Yes, thank you. I did notice that, I think it's the first time I've noticed, maybe it's just a typo or something, but there says Finance Committee Chair at the bottom of all the sheets.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a reason for that?
That's from a long time ago, and it's never been corrected in the way that the report prints out.
Okay.
But that was from almost before my time.
All right, thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions on the bills, the next item up is the City of Creswell Monthly Police Activity Report, and we have Sergeant May here to answer any questions you might have on that report.
Mayor, Council, I'd like to, introduce Deputy Courtney Dills. He prepared the documents this month, and you got a fan already? He's going to stand in next month while I'm in Australia, so we're going to warm him up tonight.
Okay, so councilors, do you have any questions for Sergeant May or Deputy Dills from our report? Councilor Clark.
I'm wondering if you can tell me a little bit about our unhoused or homeless population, if there's been any changes in the last month.
There was an unfortunate occurrence this weekend in which one of our long-standing local unhoused folks overdosed on fentanyl and was revived twice by fire department. I believe he's stable, but you might keep him in your thoughts.
I appreciate very much the production of these devices that is so easy to read now.
Grace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Grace, thank you very much. Councilor Holt.
I do have a question regarding that, actually. Do local businesses, are they carrying, what do you call that?
Narcan?
Yes, thank you.
For sale or on?
No, I just mean, are they carrying it to help people in the event that it's needed? Do we have that kind of structure here in Creswell
I
where?
can't answer that. Every deputy carries at least 2 doses.
Okay,
Occasionally, we will respond before fire and administer that, and also for our own exposure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Accidental exposure is extremely dangerous for police officers too.
yes.
But I can't answer that. I do not know.
Okay, thank you. I didn't know if there was like a program in place, I guess is what I was looking for.
Not that I'm aware of.
All right, any other questions? Councilor Dills, we look forward to working with you and having you at our meeting while Sergeant May is away vacationing.
Look forward to it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next report is our city attorney's report. You can see that he continues to work with staff on various issues. I'd be happy to try and fill in any blank spots you might have if you have questions. After that is our code enforcement report. You can see the work that Chelsea has been doing, cleaning up property. One of the things that she's very pleased about is that she's getting voluntary compliance from Killingsworth, which is a step in the right direction. We've always had a relationship with that property, and right now she's being very successful in making sure that she keeps an eye on it and it's being kept up. And then the last report is the permit totals. You can see how our permits are coming in and what areas of growth we have in our city. And that concludes the administrative reports.
Okay, thank you very much, Manager Ember. We move on to the council action items. And first, we have a public hearing and an approval of the proposed supplemental budget adjustment for the sewer fund. So in terms of the public hearing, the City Council wishes to hear from anyone who is interested in commenting on proposed supplemental budget for the sewer fund for 2022-23 fiscal year. If you would like to have anything to say to the council about this supplemental budget adjustment, please come forward to the podium and state your name and share with us your thoughts. And we will open this public hearing now. And if we have anyone who's desiring to speak, please come to the podium. We will now close the public hearing and move to the council's deliberations. So I believe we'll have a report on this from Jim Piper, our finance director.
Thank you, Mayor Stram. City Councilors, the item you have before you is a budget adjustment to the sewer fund regarding an amendment we need to do to the wastewater master plan. This was brought upon us by the DEQ as part of our new permit, and they want it done as soon as possible. The reason for this is to update a solution for our water treatment, something that's more current than the solution that was in the wastewater master plan adopted in 2018. It's important that we do this work. Whatever solution that the council decides on in the plan will then be what we ask funding for in the coming years. So because this item is above the 10% threshold for adjusting this line item or this budget appropriation level, we have to have a public hearing and allow for public comment. If the council has further questions about this, I'm willing to answer.
Councilors, do you have questions for Mr. Piper?
So as I understand it, the DEQ is requesting.
So Nicholas, just next. Councilor Smith?
So as I understand it, the DEQ is requesting an additional change to the system as it is now.
Amber?
The DEQ is requiring an updated planning document. So we are currently out with a request for qualifications for an engineer to update the planning document. And it's going to be significantly expensive, so we need to adjust the budget in order to hire that consultant. That's what this is for.
Could you maybe explain a little bit what the planning document is a little bit more?
We have a wastewater master plan that talks about our wastewater treatment plant as well as our collection system for wastewater. That plan covers 20 years. The DEQ recently reviewed our permit, and as part of the permit review process asked us to update our plan because the parameters for ammonia have changed, as well as I believe it's dissolved solids. We are out of compliance for both of those, and we'll need to look at ways to upgrade our wastewater treatment plant to meet those parameters.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Councilor Holt?
Forgive me if I should already know the answer to this, but were we out of compliance in 2018 when our last plan was put together?
We have what's called an MAO, which is a mutual agreement order that allows us to operate, and we met the terms of the MAO.
Okay. Thank you.
So Jim, just to clarify, so the funding that we need now is to update the master plan. not to do any actual work, just the master plan.
This is just the engineering work that'll be done in providing a concise plan of the solution to the problem.
And so we're projecting that the range for this update will be $200,000, and we're going to take $140,000 out of our contingency fund, which would then leave a balance of $7,300. So I'm just a little concerned with that low of a balance. Is that a concern?
Not at this time. I think we're close to another budget cycle. And if we really had an issue, we could do an interfund loan as a means to bring in more funding. But really, I'm hoping that this is the last big issue we have for the fiscal year, or the only issue we have for the fiscal year. Yeah, it's cutting it close.
Okay, Councilor Holt?
I'm curious what the deadline is on this for completion.
Michelle, do you remember there were some specific timelines?
I wish that Cliff was here tonight, but he's been out today. I can't give you the exact deadline for completion of the update, but it would be this year. This we'll be expending monies this fiscal year. So hopefully by the end of the fiscal year.
It's more out of curiosity. Thank you.
And would the remaining $60,000 come out of next year's budget?
Correct, yes,
Okay.
if we have to go that high, and the work realistically will take months. It will carry over to the next fiscal year.
Council, any other additional questions? Okay, and council members, any further, thank you, Jim. Any further discussion of this item? If not, then I'm entertaining a motion. Councilor Holt.
I move that the City Council approve Resolution 2023-01, a resolution appropriating materials and services within the sewer fund.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Councilor Osborne seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. We move to item 6B, which is a resolution appropriating materials and services within the airport fund. So we begin with a public hearing on this resolution for appropriating funds for the sewer fund. The City Council wishes to hear from any members of the public who are interested in commenting on the proposed resolution relating to the airport fund for fiscal year 2022-23. If you would like to speak to the council, please come forward to the podium, state your name, and please do so. We will open it up for a public hearing, and if no one comes to speak, we will close it in 1 minute. Public hearing is closed. I believe this is also Mr. Piper.
Popular today.
Well, thank you again, Mayor, City Councilors. The previous resolution was the bad news. This is better news. This budget resolution is going to appropriate some more fuel at the airport. We had better than expected fuel sales this fiscal year, primarily due to the forest fires in the late fall. We are in a July to June fiscal year, and so we've almost used up all the funding for airport fuel, but we have several months to go. And so $40,000 will fill the tanks again and make sure that we have fuel for the summer. The $10,000 that's asked for is the attorney fees that will be associated with the leases, and we're getting the leases updated so that they're all similar and in compliance, current. Not that they're out of compliance, but they just need to be current. So that's what you have before you. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Councilor Smith.
Is there, do you have any foresight on what the fuel sales might do for the airport? Like if we were to spend the 40K now versus wait a little bit longer? And see if the fuel comes down?
Can we have Shelley answer that question?
Yeah, it's a good question.
And our airport manager is here tonight, so Manager Humble, if you'd like to come up.
That's a loaded question because it's really volatile right now. It's not following the usual systems that it is. Right now, it's fairly low compared to what it was in August. I have 4,000 gallons of avgas and I have 6,000 gallons of Jet A still right now in my tanks. But we will be needing a purchase in April, March, could possibly if we have a run on fuel sales right now. We've been pretty heavy on jet. We've had a lot of helicopters come in. In fact, one guy just spent $1,000 with us last Thursday. So we don't ever want to have to run the risk of running out because it takes me several days to get the load scheduled and drivers. So it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Do you forecast the sales continuing to level off or?
This is usually our slow time and it hasn't been. So we will start ramping up as the weather starts getting better.
Yeah, and I might add that the council is just appropriating the funds, so the timing of when we spend it is just sometime between now and the end of the fiscal year. So Shelley's really on top of fuel prices, and she's, like she said, she has to like make sure she can piggyback on somebody else's loads to keep those costs down.
Councilor Holt.
Could you be a little more specific on what the $10,000, the contingency, will be used for?
It'll just be for Ross's time. It's
For 6, and that's just for the 6 leases?
for the 6 leases, yes, and I believe we have some time in there for Part 13 complaint, the FAA.
Formal complaint, FAA.
And I believe Ross has also spent some time regarding public records requests for the airport. I think Michelle Amber is.
The costs reflect ongoing conversations with our city attorney. It's not just to draft up the contracts. We've had ongoing conversations to address concerns that were brought up, whether or not they were legal or not, and he needed to do research into some of those issues. So it's not just a going forward expense, it's money that we've already spent for his services.
Okay,
Right.
thank you.
Thank you.
So Jim, I need a little bit of help understanding some of this. So we're needing to purchase more fuel so we can sell it,
Right.
correct? So when I look at the numbers here, I see 50 I see an amended appropriation of 212,000 some odd for materials and services, and then 50,000 added to it, bringing us up to the revision of 262,000. And then it states here that we have received 40,000 more in fuel sales.
Yes.
So that's additional income.
Yeah, that's unanticipated revenue, as they say in budget speak. You won't see it, it's listed as an appropriation, and because we have the revenues, we don't have to bring it up out of contingency.
So that 40,000 is reflection under the proposed change to 50,000.
Correct.
So we have 40,000 additional dollars that came into the city through airport sales. We're putting that in here, along with 10,000 that we're taking from the operating contingency. And then we're gonna go buy the new fuel with that $40,000. So it's not really coming out of the budget. It is coming out of the
It's coming out of the budget.
but it was new money that we received that we're turning around and spending. Michelle?
So it's kind of a pass-through is what you're saying. I just want to remind you that we can receive as much revenue as we want and not do a budget amendment. We can have extra money coming in, we can win the lottery and have millions of dollars and not amend the budget. The revenue isn't the important part, the expenditure is. So what we're asking you is for the authority to expend beyond what the budget committee approved. And we have the revenues already in place to offset that cost. Does that make sense?
Yes. So my question would be, where does the $40,000 additional, you said we could get all this money, but somehow it has to make its way into the budget and show up, because eventually they're gonna do an audit. So where does this revenue show up in the budget?
So you won't see it in a resolution, but if you look at the budget document itself, when I present the budget document at the budget committee meeting, you'll see the revenue side will be 40,000 greater than we anticipated when we initially budgeted for the fiscal year.
Okay, so we'll see it when we get the budget in May.
Yeah.
Okay, answered my questions. Thank you. Any other council questions? Okay, thank you, Jim. All right, council discussion of this item. There's no council discussion, then I'm entertaining a motion on resolution 2023-02, appropriating materials and services within the airport fund. Councilor Clark.
I move that the City Council approve Resolution 2023-02, a resolution appropriating materials and services within the airport fund.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Councilor Castillo seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Move to item 6C, which is a resolution 2023-03, a resolution appropriating personal services and materials and services within the building department fund. So we will begin again with a public hearing. If any member of the public wishes to speak to the council, please come forward to the podium and do so. We will open the public hearing and keep it open for 1 minute, unless we have someone who'd like to speak, and then you can come and talk as long as you'd like. Thank you. Public hearing is now open. We're now closing the public hearing, and I believe I will be inviting Jim Piper once again.
Thank you, Mayor, City Councilors. Well, this one's really good news. We're having a banner year in the building department, and we've already, we're close to reaching our projected revenue for the entire fiscal year already. And we're talking to the developer who's working on Sunday Drive, and they're ready to pick up more permits. The developer for the senior living facility is sending in a check, which will be a significant amount of money, and they want to pick up their permits and start working. And we found that we didn't quite budget enough for the building department fund to handle all this work. Part of that is for every building permit revenue we bring in, 12% goes to the state. So we have to cut them a check as well, and we need to make sure that we appropriate for that. Also, we hired a building permit tech who's been fantastic and has taken on this workload. We have this person at a half FTE, and they've been working at 80% FTE and then some. So we need to adjust the budget for that as well. If the council has any questions, I'm glad to help answer those.
Council members, questions for Jim? Jim, can you explain what the state surcharge fee is?
Sure. The state surcharge fee goes into a pot that helps provide some of the programs. It pays for the e-permitting system that all the agencies in the state use. I don't know if you're familiar with the e-permitting system, but it's a giant state database that collects data for each of the permits in our city and all the other cities, and allows us to track inspections and completion of those inspections. Michelle, can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, there is a permitting system that this supports, but it also supports the state's support of the building permit program. The building permit program is a state program that is then mandated or passed down to cities and counties. The building permits are uniformly applied throughout the state. One of the things that we do use is some of the state staff. We've had a developer who was uncomfortable with the staffing that's provided through our contract with Cottage Grove, and the state provided an inspector to come down and actually inspect, I believe it's the old Super 8, just because he wanted another set of eyes on it. So they do that type of thing, and they just oversee. It's an administrative fee.
Right.
Okay, thank you. I was not familiar with that. So is this one like the airport, that we have additional funds that are going in, that are going to be expended?
That's correct. So this won't take any more of our contingency. This will all be covered by revenues.
Okay. Council members, any further questions for Jim? Okay, thank you, Jim. Council members, discussion of this item.
I would just,
Councilor Castillo.
I would just comment, it's almost a good problem to have.
Okay, no further discussion, then I'm entertaining a motion on Resolution 2023, appropriating personal services and materials and services within the Building Department Fund. Councilor Clark?
I move that the City Council approve Resolution 2023-03, a resolution appropriating personal services and materials and services within the Building Department Fund.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
I'll second
Councilor Smith seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Move to item D. Public hearing on ordinance number 554 to amend the Creswell Development Code for parking lot lighting and bicycle parking surface standards. I believe that Jim gets a break, and we call Curtis to the stand. Curtis. Oh, public hearing first. Thank you. So we're going to first have a public hearing on this item, and any member of the public who wishes to speak to the amending of the Creswell Development Code for parking lot lighting and bicycle parking surface standards, please come forward and do so. If no one speaks, then we will keep the public hearing open for 1 minute. Public hearing is now open. Public hearing is now closed. So, Curtis, if you'd like to come up.
Thank you for having me. There we go. So staff, so I'm the planner with the city, in case you need a quick reminder. And so myself and the Planning Commission recommend an amendment to the Creswell Development Code. And so as a quick refresher, we have lots of plans in the city, but one of them that I hold dear to my heart is the Development Code. And so that's my job, is to enforce and review projects as they're processed through the city through our e-permitting program that we've already talked about. And so for a typical commercial project, that will be reviewed through me, and I'll write a set of findings with the Development Code applied, and then I'll present that in front of the Planning Commission, and they will either recommend approval or recommend approval with conditions or deny an application based on how we saw the project fit in the Development Code. And so Development Code will change over time. It can be a bit of a living document. And changes come about from state mandates, when the state requires that we have duplexes or some type of like missing middle housing for some of our larger cities. Changes come about when there's an identified problem in the community, and changes also can come about when there's an identified concern. And I would say that this is the latter of the three. And so the main code change that we reviewed was on a parking lot lighting. And our code says that the lighting in parking lot has to be a minimum of 2-foot candles. It has to be shielded downwards, and it has to be projected in a way to prevent spillover and specifically onto residential properties. And so we had a member of the public approach a planning commissioner about this section because of a proposed project that was in their neighborhood. And so it got brought to the planning commission, got brought to staff, and the question was, is this good enough? Should we change it? Should we look at this? How can it be better? And so me as staff, I reviewed some of the other parking lot lighting standards in some of the other communities. And I quickly figured out that I am not a lighting professional. I am a planning generalist. And so I decided to review the Illumination Engineering Society handbook. And so in that handbook, in the parking lot standards, it recommended a range of 0.5-foot candles to 4-foot candles. And I think that's how our code ended up on 2-foot candles. I mean, that's more or less the average of 0.5 and 4. So I think that makes sense of where we used to be. But having a little bit more specific range, we thought made sense. And so along those standards, they also have a uniformity ratio established, which means how evenly can the light be spread within a parking lot. And it also set standards on how high the poles can be. And so the recommended height was 25 feet, and that was also pretty common in some of our neighboring communities. And so, yeah, we thought that right now our code, it works, but hypothetically there could be an example of a 50-foot light pole and it kind of shines light, and it could be shielded, but you could see how that could be lead to some unintended consequences. And so, so that was kind of the reasoning, and then you all asked me the great question of like, okay, I hear you, but I don't see you. What does this look like? And so if I can direct your attention to the pictures of some of the parking lots that I took photos of. I trust you all have those, okay. And so these are pictures of some of the newer developments in Springfield, and Springfield has a very similar, almost exactly the same code language as this amendment is proposing. And so the first picture is of a Weyerhaeuser building off of Franklin, and the lights are 25 feet high, shielded, directed downward. And it is a little bit hard to tell on the photos, and so it's the first three pictures. But you can kind of tell the parking lot is lit, and behind the parking lot is darker, and that's kind of the goal of this. And kind of as we think about our lighting standards and what do we want, it's a balance of safety and also livability for our neighbors. And those are two of the rules that we live by in the city. And so this was a challenge for staff to try to find a balance between two goals that can be conflicting, but there's a way to find a happy medium. And then on the last two pictures are the new hotel development also in Springfield, and and you can kind of tell. So there's the one slide that says the lighting feet 12 feet and 25 feet. And so in the back of the photo, that's actually next to a riparian area, and the height limit there is 12 feet. And so we're proposing to have a similar type of height restriction when a development is either next to a riparian area or it's next to a residential area. And me personally, from walking the parking lot, I will say on the record that it was very bright in the parking lot and it was very dark right outside of the parking lot. And so also, as we were reviewing the lighting standards, one of our commissioners pointed out that our bicycle parking standards could also be revised. And so you'll also find that there's a line that expands bicycle parking. So it says bicycle parking shall be on a 2-foot by 6-foot concrete pad or a similar surface. And so I will admit that we put a lot more thought and research into the lighting portion of the section, but thought that while we're here making the change, we can do our duty and make the code a little bit more flexible. And so yeah, as staff and as identified by the Planning Commission, we recommend an amendment to the development code.
All right, Council. Councilor, questions or Curtis? Councilor Holt.
If we change the code, will this require anyone to redo work? Will this be retroactive?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah, the development code is applied at the time of development. And so if somebody did have we'd call it a non-conforming parking lot now, and they wanted to expand their business, and I mean that like in terms of expanding their building footprint, then we could apply the code at that time.
Other questions? Councilor Castillo.
Thank you, Curtis, for providing these great examples. Now we can see exactly what we're talking about. Yeah. And just to clarify, you did say the 12 feet would be if a residential was next to the parking lot? Is that what you meant by that? So that you only could go 12 feet high?
Correct.
Right, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it's within 50 feet of a residential district. So typically that'll mean it's probably abutting it. That's how I could see it working out.
Councillor Clark.
So in the discussion of the background of the proposed change, it talked about how we had two Creswell residents who approached a member of the planning commission and said, hey, I have questions and I have concerns. And so do you and the planning commission feel like this proposal is addressing the residents' concerns?
Yes, I do, yeah. And that member of the public is in the audience tonight. I don't know if the window for speaking is closed, but yeah, they've been participating in our planning commission meetings.
So Curtis, I just had a question. I noticed that it said it refers to attachments, Exhibit A, findings of fact, but I didn't find it in my packet. And I looked online, because I get the printed copy, and I found the amended minutes, which I wasn't sure why we had those in the packet, but I didn't find Exhibit A. Am I missing something?
That may have been a mistake.
So are we supposed to have Exhibit A because it says that we're approving, the ordinance is approving the reception of Exhibit A?
Let me check. So staff recommends approval of ordinance is the action. And the findings of fact more or less said that the planning commission recommends that this code amendment is in alignment with our goals and policies as a city. And then Exhibit B is what the changes are.
Well, my question is that, and I think that when you presented this at the work session, I believe then we did have the findings of fact. But in this packet that we have here, it says that one of the attachments will be the findings of fact. And I didn't find it, and I didn't find it online, so I'm thinking that if we don't have it, it may not be appropriate for the council to vote on the ordinance if section 1 is not actually in our packet.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Did other councilors receive the Exhibit A? Councilor Shuck?
No, but I assumed that the planning commission minutes was Exhibit A.
Well, I read through the minutes several times and couldn't find no reference at all even to this item. So that's why I was confused why this was in our packet.
The planning commission meetings?
The minutes? Here, I could not find that this item was even discussed, but neither was this item the findings of fact. These were minutes from October 20 Planning Commission meeting. So then, I mean, if that's true, then my question goes back to Manager Amber. Do we need to wait on this until we get the findings of fact included in the packet, since we are approving that?
That's up to the city council, actually. If you feel comfortable with the resolution as it stands and feel that you have a good understanding of the intent and what is being presented, then you could move forward. But if you want to wait and have this before you at the March city council meeting, we can do that as well.
Okay, so council, I need to hear from all of you. My recollection is that at the work session, you did have the findings of fact in the packet, and that we pretty thoroughly discussed this, and that we had some requests for you, which you've put in here with the pictures. But council, I need your input on how you want to proceed. Councilor Osborne.
I'd like to move forward with a vote.
Okay. Councilor Smith.
I agree, I'd like to move forward as well.
Okay. Awesome. Councilor Castillo.
I'm comfortable with that.
I'm seeing lots of heads nodding. All right. Then my next question is, Counselor, do you have any other questions for Curtis regarding presentation? Okay, thank you, Curtis. Now, Council, any discussion of this item? All right, if there's no discussion, then I'm entertaining a motion on ordinance number 554. Remember that the ordinance needs to be read by title twice, and that if there is to be a vote on it, it needs to pass unanimously tonight, or it will come back for a second reading in the next council meeting. So I'm entertaining a motion. Councilor Shuck.
I move that the City Council adopt ordinance number 554, amending the Creswell Development Code related to parking lot lighting and bicycle parking surface standards. This is ordinance number 554 being amended.
And you need to read it twice by title.
I move that the City Council adopt ordinance number 554, amending the Creswell Development Code related to parking lot lighting and bicycle parking surface standards. This is ordinance number 554 being amended.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Councilor Osborne seconds the motion. Any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Curtis. Thank you, Seth, and members of the Planning Commission for your diligent work on this. We move to item E, which is the Emergency Operations Plan Update. Manager Amber.
Thank you, Mayor. This has been before the City Council twice at two separate work sessions, one in November and one in January. It also has been reviewed by the City Council Public Safety Committee. Recommendations were made, notes were taken, and updates. The draft you have before you has been updated to reflect those recommendations. And I believe it's ready for your vote tonight.
All right, council members, questions for Manager Amber? Okay, seeing no questions, then council members' discussion of this item. Councilor Castillo.
My mic's already on. I looked through all the stuff that we talked about. Everything looks great, but on page 15, I still see that little of the space being there. Words are crammed together, but I suppose we could live with that. Other than that, looks great.
Council members, any further discussion? Then I'm entertaining a motion on item 6E, adoption of the Emergency Operations Plan Update. Councilor Shepherd.
I move that the City Council adopt the Emergency Operations Plan Update.
We have a motion on the floor. Is there a second? Second from Councilor Castillo. Any further discussion? Council will proceed to vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Item 7, upcoming meetings. You see those listed here. Council members, the work session on the 27th, I hate to tell you, it just keeps getting fuller and fuller. I promise you they will not all be this way, but it will very likely be a 3 to 4 hour meeting because we have a lot to cover. So come prepared. I think we're going to have some kind of goodies and snacks to treat you for all your hard work, just to let you know. And I do want to say thank you to Manager Amber. We hosted, our city hosted the League of Oregon Cities Regional meeting for small cities last Friday, and had 30-some odd people here from all kinds of cities in our town, and wonderful meal put on by Pazos. And Councilors Shutt and Holt represented our city very well, giving updates on the city. So just thank you, Manager Amber, for putting that on, and councilors for being present and representing our community. And with that, we are adjourned.